Good evening, Venerable Chief, Venerables and Venerable Bhikkhunis, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Kindly off the handset or set it to silent mode before the Dhamma talk starts. Thank you. Today we are very privileged to have with us Bhante Dr. M. Pуннаджи Mahathera and Bhikkhuni Sumangala Theri as our speakers for the Buddhist Forum under the K3 Dhammananda Lecture Series 2015. We are also privileged to have Brother Chim as our moderator for tonight. I'll read out the profile of Brother Chim. Brother Chim Siu Chun is the founder member of Subang Jaya Buddhist Association, SJBA. He has been the president of the association since 1992. He was in the team that built SJBA Vihara in 1997 on a half-acre piece of land given by Selangor state government. The association has 2,600 members and about 400 students with about 50 teachers in its Sunday Dhamma school. The association also has a dynamic and vibrant youth selection. SJBA is the founder member of Theravada Buddhist Council of Malaysia, TBCM, which was registered on 9th of May 2012 to unite the Theravada community in Malaysia and work with other national Buddhist organizations to safeguard the overall interests of Malaysian Buddhists. At its inaugural AGM on 1st of September 2012, Brother Chim had been the president of TCBM until 2012. Since 2012, sorry. Brother Chim is a professional mechanical engineer by profession and is the founder of CEO of Mega Energy Sdn Bhd. Tonight, the forum's topic will be Quo Vadis Theravada, Where to Theravada. May I invite Brother Chim? Thank you.
Namo Buddhaya, venerable members of the Sangha, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma, shall I, with due respect, invite Venerable Dr. Pуннаджи Mahathera and also Venerable Sumangala to take the seats on the stage. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sadhu to all of you for coming for this forum entitled Quo Vadis Theravada in conjunction with the 9-year memorial program for, thank you, for our late Chief Reverend Dr. K3 Dhammananda Nayaka Mahathera. The late Chief has been a pillar of strength for many of us for the propagation of Buddha Dhamma in Malaysia as well as outside Malaysia. For many years before his passing away in 2006, he's still an inspiration to many of us. I'm one of those who have benefited from the late Chief by listening to his Dhamma talks and reading his books. For many years, since 1999 or the year 2000, I can't remember exactly, but since then, Chief has been visiting Subang Jaya Buddhist Association every Wednesday to give Dhamma talks until the year 2006. And I've tried my best to attend most of his Wednesday Dhamma talks until he passed away. And therefore, when Brother Premadilaka called me a few days ago to request me to moderate this forum tonight, I accepted the request without any hesitation, except to tell him that I have no experience to moderate a forum before. So I do hope that all of us tonight can help to make this forum a successful and a meaningful one. Today we are fortunate to have the presence of two outstanding Buddhist personalities in the person of Venerable Dr. Pуннаджи Mahathera and also Venerable Sumangala, who will be the panel speakers for this forum. The topic of this forum is Ko What is Theravada. According to one dictionary, Ko What is a Latin word meaning where are you going, where to. And Theravada, I think all of us know, is the doctrine of the Thera, or the elders, recorded in the Pali scriptures. The Buddha called the so-called religion that he founded as a Dhamma Vinaya to preserve what was taught by the Buddha. The Sangha established by the Buddha, consisting of the order of the bhikkhus and the order of the bhikkhunis, learn, practice, and pass down the Buddha teaching to subsequent generations of lay people and monastic alike. However, as the Dhamma continued to spread after the Buddha Parinibbana, different interpretations of the Buddha teaching arose, which eventually lead to different schools of Buddhism. And this different school of Buddhism eventually give rise to the three yanas, Mahayana, Theravada, and the Vajrayana. And in the course of history, sometimes the predecessors of today's Mahayana and sometimes the predecessors of today's Theravada feature more prominently. Today, according to the Wikipedia, we have 360 million Mahayana Buddhists, 150 Theravada Buddhists, and 18.2 million Vajrayana Buddhists. And the Theravada Buddhists, I think all knows, are aware, are facing a lot of challenges, such as disenchantment amongst some followers with the practice of Buddhism, more as a festival, rites, rituals, ceremonies with limited and uninspiring Dhamma education, cultivation, and transformation. Some of our fellow brothers and sisters in the Dhamma have been enticed and converted to other religions due to active evangelism of some other religions, the lack of interest and also a lack of the sense of mission amongst the Theravada Buddhists. Uninspiring formal and informal Buddhist education offered by the Buddhist viharas and societies and so on and so forth. So these are various challenges facing the Theravada Buddhist community. So, what is Theravada? Where are we going from here? So today, we have the good fortune and privilege to understand what is Theravada from Venerable Dr. Pуннаджи and Venerable Sumangala. Each will be given about 20 minutes to present their perspective on where Theravada is heading to. And thereafter, we shall open the floor for Q&A, and discussion. Let me just introduce Venerable Dr. Pуннаджи, which I think also actually don't need much introduction. Most of you, I believe, know him very, very well. But I just do my duty as a moderator. That Venerable Dr. M. Pуннаджи Mahathera is a humble and unassuming Buddhist monk, unquestionably an intellectual giant of modern times, and perhaps one of the foremost among today's world authorities on Buddhism, who a few years ago served as a professor of Buddhism at Taiwan Fo Guang Buddhist University, and also as the director of Sri Lanka former Mihindu Sarasaviya University movement. Venerable Pуннаджи Mahathera owns insight field. Knowledge of Buddhism is the result of intensive, all-embracing personal study and investigation, come practice of over half a century as an ordained Buddhist monk. He's a preacher par excellence and continue to draw from an inexhaustible resource of science, philosophy, world history, and psychology, the very topics that caught his attention as a fashionable youth. He obtained his training in meditation at the Island Hermitage, Totang Tua. He studied modern science and Western method in Sri Lanka and obtained 2 doctorates, one in the United States, one in Western psychology, and another one in Western philosophy and comparative religion. with deep respect, we shall now invite Venerable Dr. Pуннаджи Mahathera.
Well, first of all, I think, I'm very happy to be present in this occasion where we are going to speak about the teachings of the Buddha, which is very important for all human beings, not only for Buddhists. And this word, qua vadis, is not an English word, so I think it is important to explain the meaning of that word. I suppose what is meant is what is going to happen to Buddhism in the future. I call it Buddhism instead of calling it Theravada because I have to include all other forms of Buddhism in this discussion. Because the teaching of the Buddha is just one thing. There are no many teachings. And that teaching today has got divided into many forms of Buddhism. And when people from other religions or people who want to become interested in Buddhism, they are confused. Are we going to follow the Theravada or Mahayana or Vajrayana or Zen Buddhism or Pure Land Buddhism or any of these different kinds of Buddhism? And so they are confused. I have been, of course, born in a country which was following what is called the Theravada form of Buddhism. And I also became interested in Buddhism, and I became a Buddhist monk. But when I became a Buddhist monk, I was ordained as a Theravada Buddhist monk. But when I studied Theravada, I was not interested in my form of culture. I am not a cultural Buddhist. I am not interested in culture. I am interested in the original teachings of the Buddha. And I did a research to discover the original teachings of the Buddha. And according to whatever I have understood, the modern forms of Buddhism, whether Theravada or Mahayana or Vajrayana, they don't really talk about the original teachings of the Buddha. So I feel that all Buddhists, whether Theravada or Mahayana or Vajrayana, instead of just following blindly their culture, it is very important for them to understand the original teaching, which is neither Theravada, nor Mahayana, nor Vajrayana, nor any other school. So this, I think, is the main qualities of this. That is, what is going to happen to Buddhism if people just cling on to their cultures It is important to understand the meaning of culture. One very important thing to understand is that every human being that is born into this world is born blind and ignorant. No one knows why you are born. And no one knows where you are supposed to go. They are completely ignorant. And as they begin to grow from childhood to adulthood, they begin to learn from the parents or teachers or other people they meet about the meaning of this thing called life, and still they don't know what the meaning is all about. And this is why so many people have been writing books on the meaning of life, because no one knows about the meaning of life. Why are we born here? How did we come into this world? This is why some philosophers point out that out of all animals in the world, the human being is the only animal who is aware of his own existence and is also aware that he or she is going to die. Death becomes a problem. And this is exactly what the Buddha has tried to solve. Because although he was born as a prince with all the luxuries at that time, he saw an old person, then a sick person, and then a dead body. Then he began to see the realities of life. Life is not such a pleasant thing where you can enjoy. Everyone has to grow old, no one wants to grow old. Everyone has to fall sick, no one likes to fall sick. Everyone has to die, no one likes to die. Now, what we call religion is an effort to solve this problem. All cultures, they have a thing called religion. Of course, every culture does it in a different way. Like every culture eats a different kind of food. Every culture will wear a different kind of clothing. And every culture will sing songs in a different way. They speak a different language. And they begin to dance in a similar way. They begin to paint pictures in a similar way. That is what we call culture. So it is simply a different way of practicing religion comes from the different cultures. And every person who is born in a particular culture thinks that is the right way. Everyone thinks my culture is the right culture. Other cultures are all wrong. What other people believe is wrong. What our culture believes is right. If we begin to think like that, people with some mind to think and reason out we begin to think these people are foolish people. So this is why what is important is not culture or the culture that we are born into or even the religion that we are born into. This is what the Buddha pointed out. We must use our head. We must begin to think for ourselves. Instead of believing, we should begin to understand, thinking. There is a difference between thinking and different between believing. Everyone likes to let the thinking be done by wise people. We don't have to think. Let the wise people do the thinking, and I will just believe what the wise people say. So every culture will have different wise people giving different ideas about life and what is to be done, how to live. You see, this is what the Buddha did. He didn't go and listen to what the Brahmins were saying or whatever the people say. He used his own head. This is why I say that Buddhism, now some people, especially the Westerners who are born into a Jewish or Christian culture, they begin to define religion as belief in gods and supernatural beings. You look into the English dictionary, that is the definition you get. And because they think religion is a belief in gods, Buddhism is called an atheistic philosophy. It's not even a religion. They say it is a philosophy. Why? Because they don't believe in God. Atheistic because they don't believe in God. This is why I say that Buddhism is neither a theistic nor atheistic philosophy. It is not even a philosophy. Buddhism is more of a science, because a scientist is a person who begins to use the human intelligence to understand what is going on in the world. That is how they discovered a very important law, and that is what is called determinism. Determinism means that every occurrence in the world, natural occurrence in the world, occurs only when the necessary conditions are present. And that is what the Buddha taught. That is what is called paticca samuppada. Hetung paticca sambhutang hetu bhanga nirujjati. What that means is, when the conditions are present, it comes into being. When the conditions are absent, it ceases to be. It's the same thing as determinism. But the problem is, the Western people made use of this law of determinism to change the world. That is what they did. What we call science is an effort to change the world. Why are they changing the world? Because the world is not as they want. When it is hot, it is not the way they want the world to be. So, they make the air conditioning or the fan to make it cool. When it is dark, they want to make it have light, and so they create the electrical bulbs. And when they wanted to go somewhere, they need to go at a high speed. So that's what Henry Ford did. When he wanted to collect money to make the car, they went and told people, I am going to make a machine that runs 60 miles per hour. So one man who was listening said, oh, if you make a machine to run 60 miles per hour, the person who goes in that will die. And he didn't give the money. He thought that he is wasting money. You see, but now you know what speed the cars are moving. And not only that, when they saw the birds flying, everyone wanted to fly like the birds. But they didn't have wings to fly. So this is why two brothers made the airplane, because they studied what are the conditions necessary for flight to take place, depending on the law of determinism. So you see, not only just flying, now we can even fly to England or United States, but not only that, they can now even go to the moon. And now they are trying to go even beyond the moon. Why? They are using human intelligence. But for what purpose? To satisfy our desires. The problem is that our desire is in conflict with the nature that we find. And this is why people want to change nature, change the world to suit our desires. But what the Buddha did was a different thing. Using the same law, he didn't try to change the world, he changed the mind of people. He produced what are called arahants. He became a Buddha himself. And with that knowledge, he could do more wonderful things than what the present day scientists are doing. And so, this is very important to understand the teachings of the Buddha, which is far beyond modern science. But modern Buddhists, they know nothing about this. This is the unfortunate thing. Buddhism has almost disappeared from the world. We only worship the Buddha. What are called Buddhists, what are they doing? Just worshipping the Buddha. They don't even practice the 5 precepts properly. Everyone, when they come to the temple, recite the 5 precepts. But how many of you really practice the 5 precepts? That means even practicing the 5 precepts is not an easy job. Sometimes they even blame the monks for not practicing properly. Today, this is why I say that Buddhism today is like playing volleyball. What you do in volleyball is you throw the ball to the other side and the other side throws it back to you. Everyone studied Buddhism and tries to find out not whether you are practicing Buddhism, but whether other people are practicing Buddhism. So everyone begins to criticize other people for not practicing Buddhism. It is like throwing the ball to the others, and the others throw it back to you. So Buddhism has become the ball to throw from this side to the other side. Very few people really seriously practice the teachings of the Buddha. So I don't want to waste time talking too much about this. So the main thing is that the future of Buddhism is very important, and if the real Buddhism has to be understood and practiced, and if we want to reap the benefits, we have to study the original teachings of the Buddha and not just Theravada or Mahayana or Vajrayana or any jhana.
Thank you, Bhante, for his words of wisdom within this 20 minutes or so. Before we proceed further, and also Q&A for Bhante, we would like to invite Venerable Sumangala to also give her perception on core what is Theravada. Venerable Sumangala received her MA in Philosophy from the International Buddhist College, Thailand in the year 2011, and also MA in Industrial and Organizational Psychology in 1999 from University Kapangsaan, Malaysia. In 1990, she received a book award from University Kapangsaan, Malaysia. Her first encounter with Buddhism was at the age of 19 in 1985, where she saw a serene-looking Buddhist monk and people meditating. These sights delighted her heart and triggered her to pursue, learn, and practice the Buddha Dhamma. In 2005, she became an Anakarini, living her fruitful corporate life as a branch manager in the retail industry. Later, in 2008, under the sacred Sri Mahabodhi at Buddhagaya, India, she was ordained following the Sri Lanka Theravada Dasa Sale tradition under the late Venerable Dr. K. Sri Dhammananda. Under the Bhikkhu preceptor teacher of Venerable Mahinda Thera, one of the early disciples of the late Venerable Dr. K. Sri Dhammananda, Nayaka Mahathera, and also Venerable Sumeta Maniyo. In 2015, she took her higher ordination with Venerable Ayya Santini Thera, and Venerable Sanankara Nayaka Mahathera as a preceptor teacher. Currently, she is the president of Ariya Vihara Buddhist Society Panda Sri Damansara and one of the wisest of Gotami Vihara Society. With a group of committed devotees, she initiated the Ariya Rainbow Kids Program, a holistic family Dharma program. Her noble wish is to provide and support the growth of the Buddha Sasana by paving way for others to experience and realize the gems of the Dharma, and especially for the Buddha Bhikkhuni Sasana to grow for the well-being, happiness, and benefit of the many. We shall, with deep respect, invite Venerable Sumangala.
Respected Chief Reverend Dhammaratana and Bhante Pуннаджи, thank you very much for allowing me to also share some perspective on the future of Theravada. I'm very new actually and very young, and all these are my great teacher and I'm still learning, but I will share a little bit of my small thoughts. Hopefully it can also fit in for the benefit of the many. As we look at just now what Bhante Pуннаджи has mentioned, between the sectarian Buddhism or the schools of Buddhism, we can see the chronological change, yeah, how culture, tradition, custom comes into the Buddhist teaching. So of course we have many Buddhism, but actually one Dhamma Vinaya. So, but along the way, when Buddhism travel, when it's translated to local language, there's always tendency to incorporate local culture, local tradition, and custom. So, as time passed by, we can see that I do agree with Bhante Pуннаджи that a lot of time when we are practicing Buddhism, it became a worshipping kind of activities instead of really learning and practicing what the Buddha teach. I used to say to people, you know, Dhamma is a way of life. And the word Dhamma itself tells us that it's something that can uplift us, yeah, can uphold us up from falling into suffering or falling into woeful state. So when we talk about learning the Dhamma, practicing the Dhamma, and realizing the Dhamma, it should be something that upholds us up, not only individually, but also in the family, in the community, and overall, you know, for the well-being of all human beings and others. So, as Buddhism is presented today, there are many times that we can see a lot of Buddhists, they come for Buddhism without really understanding what the Buddha Dhamma is all about. Most of us Buddhists in Malaysia that we can see in the statistics, it was said that we have about 19.6% Buddhists. So that means around 5.4 million. But how many Buddhists that when you ask them, what is three refuge? They can't even answer you. What more to talk about? Four Noble Truth, Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah? So, in the statistic, of course, they are called nominal Buddhists. So they can be once a year Vesak Buddhists. Yeah? So at least they come to do some prayers or to do some donation. Not too bad, it's also good. Yeah? At least once a year. Yeah? And some, of course, they come to Buddhism for certain reason. That is also due to because of the, especially Chinese Buddhists. They are so connected with those activities that is very Chinese-based culture. Yeah. For example, I say Ulambana. A lot of Chinese will come, but is it exactly a Buddhist tradition or Buddhist way? Yeah, but they will come. Yeah? And then during a certain period where they can do a lot of charity in the hope of making marriage, then they will come. Because why? The idea to go to heaven. Yeah, you accumulate more merits, you can go to heaven, the belief system. So again, like Bhante Pуннаджи just mentioned, as Buddhists, if 5 precepts we can't even practice. Yeah? So it's very challenging even to move further to practice and to explore further the Buddhist teaching that is very noble, that leads to 3 kinds of happiness. The happiness here and now in this very life that you can experience, and also the happiness hereafter if you don't make it to enlightenment. Yeah, it's a guarantee for good rebirth if you practice it well, and also if you are diligent enough and very focused, then of course even enlightenment in this very life. So the Buddha's teaching is not very, very difficult. But a lot of people have this perception that, you know, the Buddha's teaching maybe is just for monks and nuns. Yeah? And some of them think Nirvana is very, very far. Yeah? But is it so? Actually, Buddha has put it in very simple form. Out of 45 years teaching, he only summarized in few lines. Yeah, Sabapapasa akaranang, kusalasa upasampada, sachita paryoda panang, etang buddhana sahasanang. So, 4 lines, if you can remember, then it is not too far to experience what the Buddha meant by happiness, by little enlightenment that will lead to the final enlightenment. So the first line, it says, most people or translate as avoid evil. And a lot of time we think evil is outside. Yeah, but I would prefer to translate as don't do all evils. Don't do at all. Yeah. And second line, because most of the time we have a lot of bad habits, a lot of things that we do which is not conducive for our own happiness. So don't do it, because naturally suffering follows. Second line, there are a lot of goods that we haven't have, a lot of qualities that we still don't have. So we should cultivate good. And third line, a lot of people will say, purify the mind. But what the Buddha mentioned is not just the word purify the mind, it's very specific. Purify one's mind. Most of the time we are very busy trying to purify others' mind. Yeah? So it's so important to remember to purify one's mind. And this is the teaching of all Buddhas. So what it means is, since we are so fortunate to still be able to listen to the good teaching of the Buddha in this very life, and we are so fortunate to be born as a human, yeah, so we can have the capacity, yeah, in a human form. Manusa means mana and usaha. Mana means mind can be developed. So it's this form that we can develop our mind. If to be born as a dog, they cannot do dana, they cannot practice morality, but as human, we can, because our mind can be developed. Yeah, and you don't have to wait for future Buddha to come, yeah, to lead you to enlightenment. Because why? All the Buddhas teach the same. Don't do all evils, cultivate good, purify one's mind. Yeah, and this is where it leads you to Nibbana. So it's so important to understand the earliest teaching of the Buddha and to differentiate it between the culture, custom, tradition. Some, of course, some rites, simple rites and ritual for devotional practice may help some people to reflect. And even during the Buddhist time, that people offer flowers and all those things. A simple gesture for reflection, it brings about the devotional part. But when we talk about worshipping and believing without practicing, then that's where you don't get the benefit. Yeah? And the Buddha's teaching is very grounded, down to earth, and you can experience it by yourself. That's why the Buddha never referred himself as a god, and of course he is not. He's just a teacher. He refers himself as a teacher, as a path shower, and as a spiritual friend. And with this definition, he himself said the teacher don't have the fist, meaning they are not in power to make you anything. But we have many beliefs nowadays. They are savior, Buddha as savior, Buddha as many different form, and especially Chinese, we like the Buddha that will brings about fortune, the Buddha that heals our sickness. And so that's why we say, if you promote Buddhism in a way to come and listen to the Dhamma and to practice the Dhamma, you can see in this hall how many people will turn up. If today Bhante Pуннаджи and myself say we are going to do some miracles that it can get rich, yeah, I think there will be more people to come, right? So it is like that, yeah. So in the form of Theravada Buddhism that we are talking about, a lot of people also have this perception, yeah, that Theravada Buddhism is very dry. Sometimes they think because they focus a lot on, especially when they talk about Theravada Buddhism, there are also many schools of them. Yeah, just say if you're Burma, you say Budang Pujimi. You go Thailand, you know, Arang Samasam Buddhu, you know, and Budang Bhagwantang Avivadimi. You go Sri Lanka, they say Namo Buddhaya. Yeah, so even in Theravada itself, yeah, you have a different way of even honoring the Buddha. But in Malaysia, we are very fortunate because we have all, so we can adapt very fast. Even the tune of chanting also we can adapt very fast. This is one thing about Malaysian. They are very special. They can adapt to many culture very fast. But at the same time, we also know that beside all these differences, we say there are many Buddhism, but one Dhamma Vinaya only. Yeah? So all we need to focus is a lot to the basic teaching. If Theravada were to be moved forward, that kind of notion or perception, yeah, should have changes. Yeah? What other people perceive also reflect what they are, or sometimes the way they claim themselves. Yeah? So, and also a lot of people think that Theravada also very pessimistic. They don't care so much about other people. Yeah, they only self-cultivate, and they don't do charity work, compassionate work. Yeah, and sometimes they perceive Theravada as not so compassionate. Yeah, and there are also other perception. Theravada is very orthodox. Yeah, orthodox, and also very patriarchy. Yeah? Very male-oriented, yeah. So these are all the perception that is projected by Theravada themselves, yeah. But is it true that Theravada is like that? Theravada is supposed to be the doctrine of the elders, right? The elders here, in of course the dictionary says the meaning of Thera means senior. I would see it as a senior in the sense that they are the very early batch of schools of Buddhism that comes about after the Buddha's Mahaparinibbana. But in the sense that this word itself was not there during the Buddha's time, yeah. And what they have, the scholarly research say is that in the beginning, of course, the schools of Buddhism started, and then they have Reformation, and the Mahayana took off. And at the beginning, they divide themselves as the Mahayana and Hinayana. Yeah? But the word was not very friendly. Yeah? It denotes someone like lower. But anyway, I think in the World Fellowship, I think, in probably late 19th century, yeah, during the meeting of Anagarika Dhammapala in Japan, then they start to use more neutral word to indicate the schools, the only schools that survive, yeah, in the Theravada form, to be called as Theravada. Yeah, so earlier it was not also called Theravada. Right? But in one way, when we see it as a senior, means more elders teaching, the doctrine that they hold on, of course, the authoritative text that they have is Pali. So Pali Nikaya is one of the very important source that all of us should refer to. Yeah? And not only that, we think that only we have Pali Nikaya, that is a very early source of the teaching of the Buddha, but actually in the Chinese tradition, they also have, although they have a very big corpus of teaching of the Buddha, they also have the Nikaya, but it's called Chinese Agama. And Venerable Ying Sun has actually made comparison study between the Pali Nikaya and the Chinese Agama. It's basically the suttas, the 4 suttas, and it said that about more than 90% are similar. Although the chapter or the arrangement may be different, but the teaching is similar. So means we can take this as, we don't say the original, because after 500 years, things can be added in, Although from oral tradition, from one person to another person, along the way, things may change. We know that because why? Even during Asoka's time, during the Buddhist time, we said Dhamma Vinaya only. But during Asoka, King Asoka's time, where they compile, we have already 3 baskets. So it means from Dhamma, Vinaya, then we have Abhidhamma. So it means things change, and more analysis are put in, more commentary based on the sutta. But one thing good about the Buddhist text is this: the earlier teaching, they have like what they have is they close it as that is the earliest. Then whatever subsequently comes, they classify as commentary. Then later sub-commentary, and then individual writings, sutras, and all others. So in this sense, that if we truly want to go forward for Theravada, I think we should refer to the consistency of the teaching in the Pali Tipaka or in the Chinese Agama. The Chinese extant is not in Sanskrit anymore, but it's translated into Chinese. So that will be the very basic foundation of the teaching of the Buddha. The rest, of course, a lot of writings and developments and all those things. Sometimes when you read, if you can read the Nikaya and then read again, you'll find sometimes even the slight change, it actually distorts the meaning of what the Buddha tried to say. So it's important to fall back to the earliest teaching of the Buddha. And for the Theravada also to move forward, I would say that the issues of bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, about the order of bhikkhunis, I think it's also important to rectify this, as that we understand that Buddha has paved way. In order for the Buddha Sasana to grow, the Buddha have actually provided a platform for bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. Not only that, for upasaka and upasika. For those who are more committed to develop their mind and the aim for Nibbana, these are provided for them to cultivate their mind, so they'll be able to have that good platform to cultivate their mind. And once, actually, about the bhikkhuni issue, once this monk told me, he said, to debate on whether bhikkhuni order should, be established or not, he said it's a waste of time. He said, for example, if you see this table, got 4 legs, 1 leg is missing. Are you going to debate and spend a lot of time saying, should we put this leg or should we not put this leg? The table still remain 3 legs, right? Is it stable? Is it complete? Then he said, what we should do is very simple. Just fix the leg. Finish the story. What to debate? He said, if this table is not enough for us to understand, he said, what about the chair you sit now? If there's only 3 legs and 1 leg is missing, can you sit comfortably there? Of course not. So he said, the debate so much time, seminar on whether bhikkhuni should be established or not established, you say it's really a waste of time. What we should do is, we know the Buddha has set this platform for it. Yeah? Where are we arguing about what the Buddha have provided? Yeah? And so, it's so enlightening to hear that. And I think we need all these fourfold sangha, very important. Yeah? Without bhikkhu, no bhikkhuni. Yeah? And it's also important to have bhikkhuni, so we also can support the bhikkhu. Yeah? We also cannot live without the upasaka and upasika to support us. So it's so important that whatever that the Buddha have set forth, it's not just a merely overnight kind of things. Yeah? It's a very well-grounded, very established and very forward, onward-looking, yeah, for the well-being of the many. So this is another thing that is so important to understand. For Theravada to move on, I think the bhikkhu is very important for the bhikkhu to also support the bhikkhuni, and also for the bhikkhuni to support the bhikkhu, and the upasaka, upasika also to learn from the bhikkhu and bhikkhuni and support them, and they also offer in return to support them in the development of the Dhamma. Yeah? This is another point that I'd like to highlight. And the third point is about the mission of Theravada Buddhism. Yeah? So like I said, a lot of people think that Theravada Buddhism is only for self-cultivation. And some even unaware that they have uttered not very wholesome word, that they say they are very selfish. They do not understand what it means to cultivate the mind. Yeah? And it really needs time. Yeah? And the condition. Yeah? And if we can have one person who have cultivated and is noble, they can really benefit a lot other people. What we do only is very simple, to support them in the 4 requisites. That's all. They don't ask much. Indeed, actually, to take care of monks and nuns is very simple. Yeah, they only eat 2 meals a day. Their clothes can be wear for years. They only need a space to shelter them off from rain and shine. And if they are sick, the lay can provide them some comfort of the body so they can practice well. That's about it. Yeah, and if we are able to help them, to provide them this good condition for their practice, if we are able to produce, all these noble people, they will benefit a lot of people. Look at the Buddha. How many people has benefit from him? If the Buddha is very far from us 2,600 years ago, look at our late chief. How many people has benefited from him? So it's so important for us to understand the practice of the Dhamma and to help to produce good teachers, good practitioners, so they in return will be able to guide others to the path, and the sasana can live longer. Imagine one day there's no monks, no nuns, only lay speaker. How do you think we can relate to the Buddha's teaching? Very difficult. But as the monks and nuns wearing the robe, even by seeing one who wears the robe, automatically your heart will compose. If you want to do bad things also, you think twice. Right? Just by seeing a monk or nun. And so important. So it's important to help maintain and support those people who wish to renounce. It's not so easy, to renounce. Even to renounce the hair, not only for male. Of course, female is very difficult, but for male also, sometimes to renounce the hair is also so difficult. Half year it will grow back, but it's so difficult to let go, right? So what more? So it is important for all to give that support. Yeah. Sometimes we think other people's son or daughter becomes monastic. We say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. If your children, you must also say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So difficult, to get one. And in the Chinese, they say if you have one in your family who renounce, 7 generations will benefit. Yeah. How great is the merit? Yeah. So it's important to give that support. Yeah. And Theravada is not pessimistic. It is not orthodox. If you follow the Buddha's teaching properly, it is indeed a very welcoming teaching for people to come and explore. Just like we said, Dhamma, you can experience it immediately, the benefit. Yeah, you can see for yourself, and that result. Yeah, and the wisdom will come. Yeah. So the last point that I'd like to highlight is in the name of Theravada, when we teach. Yeah. So in the past, Theravada always seen as, the teacher will take a fan and then they won't look at you at all. They will look on the floor and then they will talk. In our time, if we talk like that, I think most of the people will start to doze off. Yeah. Why? Because our time are different. Yeah. Not only Buddhism, even Christian and many other religions, they are also talking about the declination. Yeah? Why? Because the religion of today that is so powerful is the religion of smartphone. Do you know that? You eat with it, you sleep with it, you go toilet with it, your life is with it. You try to take away the smartphone of your children, they will yell at you, quarrel with you, and they cannot live with it. In China, people can, don't go to toilet because of games, computer games also. You know what they do? They wear diapers. This is the religion of today. And if all of us don't wake up, don't talk about Theravada, any Vada, any ism, it's gone. The religion of today is truly the religion of smartphones, computer games. People lost their responsibility, duty, their rationale. And this is the most powerful drug of today. They poison the mind without you knowing. The parent willingly invite the drug for their children. Your children don't have to go out to take drug. Now, if I say, you will agree with me. The drug of today is in the room. Your children don't have to go out. They are connected to the whole world. You don't know what is happening. So bear in mind, the education that we should take, I think, is to really to educate not only the children, because nowadays a lot of parents send their children to Sunday school. We have Sunday school providing Buddhist teaching. But if we are going to provide the Buddhist teaching in a form like study, it's going to be very taxing for the children. They go to school from very young and very early in the day, and they come back very late. So too much for them as a text study. So we have to go into a very basic thing about their life, because they don't know how to. They only know how to press button, how to use remote. They don't have to remember things. Computer will remember for them. So they lose all the important things. Their brain, their mind, their bodily activity, motor activity, they're very weak. You try to ask some youngster to do things, they don't have energy. It's true, you try them out. You ask them things, they say, I know. You ask them to do, don't know. Why? Computer know ma. They don't know, so they think they know. Yeah. So I offer this for your reflection, and I think the way forward is we have to revamp the way we educate our Buddhist, the Buddhist teaching to our young ones as well to our adult. Yeah. Thank you very much for your attention. Yeah.
We're grateful and thankful to Venerable Dr. Pуннаджи and Venerable Sumankala for sharing with us their perspective, their insights into the way forward for Theravada Buddhism. Just to recap, a quick summary. Venerable Dr. Pуннаджи mentioned that instead of looking at Theravada Buddhism, you rather look at Buddhism as a whole. Bhante mentioned that today Buddhism has divided to many forms that make many people very confused. We have all Mahayana, Theravada, Vajrayana, and so on and so forth. Bhante was ordained as a Theravada monk, but he was not so much interested in the cultural form of Buddhism. Buddhism that was developed over the years, influenced by culture, custom, tradition, and so on and so forth. But rather, Bhante was more interested to learn the original teaching of the Buddha. Bhante says it's very important to understand the original teaching of the Buddha rather than cultural Buddhism. Bhante mentioned about the various people looking for the meaning of life. How and why we were born, how we grow old, we sick, and then eventually we die. Many regions, because of the various culture and tradition and custom, offer a different interpretation of the way of life. Bhante mentioned that the Buddha has found and has shown us the way, and it's important for us to understand, to think rather than just to believe. Bhante mentioned that Buddhism is neither theistic or atheist philosophy, not even a philosophy, but a science. But unlike the scientists that would like to change nature using the law of determinism, the Buddha didn't do that. The Buddha instead tried to understand the mind and try to change the mind of people. And Bhante advised that we should not just be worshipping the Buddha, but instead to learn and understand and practice the teaching of the Buddha, right? Especially the original teaching of the Buddha. And the future of Buddhism is important. It's important for us to understand and practice the real Buddhism based on the original teaching of the Buddha. All right, and Venerable Sumankala has just now mentioned to us that Buddhism has evolved over the years, influenced by culture, also tradition and custom. And there are many forms of Buddhism, but there's only one Dhamma Vinaya. Right? She mentioned that that many come to the temple, they appreciate the culture, the ceremony, the various ceremony, the various merit-making event of the temple. But it's important for us to learn and practice the Dhamma, even just the 5 precepts. So both Venerable actually emphasize the importance of understanding and practice the original teaching of the Buddha as the way forward. Venerable Sumankala mentioned that some may think that Buddhism is only for monks and nuns, but it's for everyone. That we learn and practice the Dhamma as found in the essence, found in the Dhammapada 183, that is abstain from all evil, cultivate good, and purify the mind, and so on and so forth. All right. So in short, this is what has been shared with us by the both venerables, we shall now open to the floors for question answer. Okay. Anyone would like to pose any questions to our two venerables here? Yeah, please. Let us know your name before you ask the question.
I am Dr. Lai Swat Yen. I'm the Vice President of Gautami Vihara, and also I'm a lecturer at University of Malaya. And first and foremost, I would like to express my appreciation for a very stimulating talk. I've enjoyed it very much. And because of that, I have two, I hope not overly, that you don't find it overly provocative questions to ask. And first to Venerable Dr. Pуннаджи, because Venerable Dr. Pуннаджи was posing how important it is for us to go back to original Buddhism, right? Which is beyond, as I understand it, which is beyond the Theravada, Mahayana, and also Vajrayana. So my question is, those three sectarianism, as we can see today, is still very much in existence, like in the way how ordination is done and how temples are also set up, right? It's based on a certain tradition. So do we then mean that we need, cannot hear, is that? Can I? I'm not sure. I think Venerable is not.
I didn't understand what the question was properly.
Couldn't understand your question. Just straight away ask the question.
Oh, okay. So do we then go back to original Buddhism by doing away with the three different ways of ordaining then, you know, because we still have the sectarianism based in the way temples and all those are set up, right? Like the Mahayana, the Vajrayana, you know, the Theravada. Because Venerable Pуннаджи was saying we should, original Buddhism is not that. Then do we do away with it? Then that's my question, in gist.
Well, the important thing is that all kinds of Buddhism today are mainly focusing on what is called karma and rebirth. If you do good, you will be going to heaven. If you do bad, you go to hell. Now, that kind of Buddhism, it's what I call punishment-reward ethics. That means if you do good, you will be rewarded. If you do bad things, you will be punished. All religions are talking about that. So, is that what the Buddha came to talk about? That's the problem. The Buddha was focusing on something else. And that is what we call the Four Noble Truths. What is suffering? What is the cause of suffering? What is the end of suffering? And how can we end suffering? That's the main thing. And the main thing that the Buddha is trying to point out is that what is going on in the world is not what we want. Things are not happening as we want. What that means is our desires are coming in conflict with nature or the reality of nature. Everyone that is born has to grow old, fall sick and die. That is not what we want. Now, other religions are also trying to solve that same problem. Now, the problem is that in other religions, they are trying to think that this world is governed by supernatural beings. And they pray to the supernatural beings, please help us. Please change things. And they are waiting. And they also think that when they die, they can go to heaven, where there is eternal life and eternal happiness. but we don't know. We have never seen these gods, and we don't know whether after death we'll be able to go to heaven. How do we know? We are only believing. So it is only a belief that is trying to make us happy. Now, in the Bible, they point out that this problem is not due to God. The blame is put on Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve made a mistake. And what was the mistake? To eat from the tree of wisdom. That means taking wisdom itself is the thinking. And it is only because we start thinking that we begin to understand that there is something wrong with the world. And so the blame is put on the people. It is like, we'll say, Henry Ford is making the motor vehicle, and if there is something wrong with the motor vehicle, who is to be blamed? You can't just blame the vehicle for that. You have to blame the creator of the vehicle. You see, but here the blame is put on the vehicle, which is the human being, is what God created. So that kind of way, they are trying to solve the problem, but it doesn't really solve the problem. This is why the Buddha pointed out that you have to start using your human intelligence to find out what is wrong. The mistake is not the nature of the world, but our emotions, which want the world to be otherwise. We are not ready to receive the true nature of the world. When someone dies, we don't want that person to die. If your mother dies or your father dies, you begin to cry and lament because you don't want that to happen. That means the natural occurrence is against your wishes. So what the Buddha points out is that we have to understand the true nature of life, which is anicca, dukkha and anatta. That means everything is impermanent in this world. It comes and goes. And because it is impermanent, we become unhappy as a result. That is the dukkha. And what is happening against our wishes cannot be seen as something that belongs to me. If the body begins to grow old, fall sick and die, it is not as we want. If it is not as we want, we cannot say that this is under my power. If it is not under my power, I cannot say this is mine. So therefore the body is not mine. And if it is not mine, can we call the body myself? We cannot even call my body myself. So if it is not mine and not myself, we have to give up our attachment to the body. This is what the Buddha pointed out. We have to give up our desires and attachments. That is why we are unhappy. So this is the main teaching of the Buddha. not just doing good things to go to heaven or to avoid doing bad things so that we'll go to hell. You see, that is a different story. That story was there even before the Buddha. Even before the Buddha was born, they believed in this karma and rebirth. So the Buddha didn't come to talk about karma and rebirth. He came to talk about dukkha and how to end dukkha. The dukkha is due to our emotions. Tanha really is not just desire, it is an emotion. It is only when we are able to gain control over our emotions, not by suppressing the emotions, but by learning to relax the body and calm the mind. It is that calmness of mind that is called nirvana. Nirvana. Nir means non, vana means shaking. The non-shaking of the mind. That is what is called akuppa cheto vimukti. Akuppa means what is not disturbed. Cheto vimukti means the freedom of the mind that will never be disturbed. That is the meaning of nirvana. And so, what we have to do is to learn simply two things: relax the body and calm the mind. That is all that we have to do. This is the teaching of the Buddha.
Thank you, Bhante. Answer your question. Instead of focusing on the different yanas, I think Bhante was saying that it's important for us to focus on the central teaching the Buddha, which is the Four Noble Truths, and to walk along the path to eventually attain Nibbana. Bhante. Yeah, next question.
Okay, my name Gordon, Malaysian. Okay, I've been studying Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, and a few others. And in my opinion, all those religions are created. If you say Islam, then they say they are right. There is an Arab story. You talk Christian, this is a Jewish story, they are right. Now when you talk about Buddhism, then the Indian story is right. Because everyone's taking their own way of thinking, and they create a war today. Because the Arab think they are right, the Christian think they are right, because they also have what they call denunciation. When you join Christian, you have to denounce everything. Not only your belief, your culture. As a Chinese, okay? As a Chinese, if we lose our culture, right? We have no roots. We will be the last people. Number two, my question is this. The religion among yourself, whether it's Christian, Islam, and Buddhism or Hinduism, has a lot of conflict. They are the one that create war. And if the China itself been sort of separated by Christian, by Muslim, I tell you, eventually the Chinese also disappear. As today you have seen, those days were used to be a lot of Buddhist country, right? But today the country all changing to either Christian or Muslim. It is true, and it's still multiplying. Now I have studied your Buddhism. I have never find a Buddhism teaching and answer how to protect your Buddhist organization being invaded. That's my question about culture. And the question is, if we lose our Chinese culture, where would be our roots? How are we going to survive in this world? I don't know. Number two, about your smartphone, right? Smartphone has been introduced. As I said, addiction. Now, this is not only a smartphone. The day when opium was introduced to China, they destroyed China. Then after that, today we still have a lot of addiction. We have the cigarette, right? We have the beer. We have so many addictions that have been introduced. But I can't see how Buddhism helped to dismantle this mass addiction. Perhaps they will explain, and we have the culture, and we explain how can we get everybody together. Because I have seen as a Chinese that Buddhism is something like Indian. Because I have never known much more about Buddhism until I studied. A lot of lifestyle come from India. Christianity from the Jews, Islam from the Arab. And we felt, as the Chinese, we've been divided by that. Thank you.
Okay, the important thing is that I have already said that culture is the problem. That all cultures think our culture is the right thing and others are all wrong. The important thing is to give up cultures and become civilized. To become civilized is to become friendly with others, understand others, listen to others, and recognize that what other people say is also important, not only what you say. And so that culture to be given up and become civilized, that is what the Buddha teaches. Civilization. Buddhism is not a culture, Buddhism is a civilization. The moment we become civilized, we begin to understand other people's point of view. We are not trying to say our point of view is the right thing. That is the important thing. This is the meaning of Samma Ditti. Samma Ditti means the harmonious perspective. The harmonious way of looking at things is to see from all angles, like the blind men who touched the elephant and they started fighting because they only saw a part of the elephant. You have to see the whole elephant, then you won't be fighting. That's the important thing to understand. All religions are teaching the same thing, to avoid what is bad and to cultivate what is good. And if we take that as the real teaching, then there will be no wars in the world. Everyone will be happy.
Thank you, Bhante. Answer your first question about the Gordon. That it's good to give up our culture to attain being civilized by attaining Samadhi. Okay, I think the second question we posed to Venerable Samankala on how Buddhism can help to solve the problem of addiction to all this smartphone and computer and so on and so forth.
Can I say a little bit about culture? Yeah, I'd like to quote about Kalama Sutta. If you have read Kalama Sutta, it's a very interesting sutta where, of course, like all of us, we'll meet different teachers and everybody claims theirs is the best, right? So what the Buddha did is, when the same question was posed to him, then he very skillfully answered, we just don't merely believe tradition, just don't merely believe hearsay, don't merely believe rational, don't merely believe theories, don't merely believe that if the person looks like a very great teacher, and don't just merely believe that if the person have a great following, he must be right. Okay? So if you look at this sutta, what it tells is, if you find in, if we say culture and we overgeneralize it, then it may not be also in the perspective. There are cultures which is good. There are also cultures which is not so good. Yeah. So I think if we take the Kalama Sutta as a guide for us to also, with our own experience, I believe in certain culture, for example, Chinese culture, you're taught to be respectful to the elders. And also, like in the past, extended family is very important. So these are the ways and means how they keep the family as a unit, and it's so important to pass down certain good culture. For example, the teaching of xiao sun, and some good behavior. So those culture which is conducive for the cultivation of good, maintain it. I believe in Chinese culture you also have, in Indian culture also you have, whether Sri Lankan or Western culture, there are certain culture that is good. But there are also certain culture that is not so good. For example, in the Buddhist time, there are culture that they kill to make sacrifice to offer. And this is where it is not wholesome, that the Buddha discouraged. And even in our time, we also have culture like that in Chinese tradition, that you kill to sacrifice the animals. The bigger the pig is, I think the more blessed you will go to heaven, right? Some believe. But if that culture is not so wholesome, I think we can do away with it. But I think now Buddhists are more, Chinese Buddhists are more aware, and many people are going for like vegetarianism, and so in a way to abstain from killing. But of course the Buddha didn't advocate vegetarianism also, right? So we have to also understand. So sometimes debates or about we should be vegetarian so as to observe the first precept well. Also not true, right? So in the Buddhist teaching, a lot of time we need to investigate, test it out, and you find it's not harmful, and you find that it's not essential but wise, and you find that it brings about benefit, then you can advocate it. So it doesn't mean that the whole culture is totally bad. So different cultures, they have their richness, but we have to know which is which that brings about, like Bhante Punnaджи says, civilization, that brings about the quality of the mind. For example, kindness, friendliness, compassion, patience, diligence, wisdom, many more, generosity. So if those are the qualities, I think we can advocate. So that is my perspective on that. And so if we can cultivate that, I think, like just now the brother mentioned, as Buddhists, it's important to look within. Just like the Buddha said, we always like to look out, not in. So in order to make changes to the world, we always have to look to oneself. It's easy to point out, right? What fault people have or what weakness, but very difficult to see our own. So as the Buddha's teaching, we always look within. Although we are aware of the around, but we always look within to make changes, because this is within our what they call effort. Outside, is very difficult to change people. We can't even change ourselves, what more others? But if we can change, we take care of ourselves, then if one person don't kill, then another person is safe. One person don't steal, another person is secure their property. So we look into that as that. One person that keeps the precept well is actually very beneficial for themselves and for others. We don't say you don't steal, but then we want to control others, but not ourselves, right? So it's so important to come from us, and that is very important. And the next is about how do we overcome addiction. So I think Buddhism is the answer to this. And if we can, because the Buddha's teaching is talking about the mind. And now we are swept with this addiction. This addiction, which is intoxicants of the mind. In the past, the fifth precept is abstain from liquor, abstain from drugs, right? Now I think you have to say abstain from smartphone when it's not necessarily. You name it, not only the children, the adult too. Not only the adult, the elder too. Whole day. Their lifestyle all change. And it leads to a lot of actually sickness. Now, how do we do that? I think first it's important to provide a Dhamma education that brings about the awareness. Like I said, the education that we have now is still very much text-based. We don't really communicate with the people that come for the Dhamma. To bring about their awareness, to reprogram their mind. So that's why in our center we introduce a program, a family Dhamma program. We call it a program. A lot of people ask us, do you have Sunday school? I say we don't have school, we don't have class, but we have program. A program is to reprogram, because we have been programmed in the past. We are also being programmed now. So I think the education that we should provide is to reprogram them, to bring about the awareness that how much they have being addicted by this, and how we can educate the parents when they want to introduce smartphone to their children. They should first know what is the impact. And if they want to introduce, also introduce at the right age. Sometimes it's the problem of the parents, not the children, because they want to chase after the latest model, so they buy the new one for themselves, the old one they pass to their children. So the problems actually come from the adult. So we need to educate the adult, the parents, so they are aware that the danger of not other people are intoxicating their children, but they themselves. After that, they cannot control. So firstly, the parents must understand the danger. It looks so friendly, but it's very dangerous. And so, number one, to educate the parent about the impact. Number two, when they want to introduce, make sure that they talk to the children. What is the use? We don't say smartphone is bad. It depends on how you use it. And most people misuse it. So if you use it to be a very functional communication tool, then it's very good. But if you misuse it, then you become addicted. So I have parents who, when they introduce a smartphone for their children, what they do is, number one, the time that they can spend for the smartphone. Number two, they have a certain feature that they can lock. They can lock the hours for them to use. So from very beginning, if you train them and you educate them properly, then they won't be addicted. But if you just give them without proper guidance and coaching of what it is used for, then you have problem. And this is one. And number two, I think we also have to introduce something more interesting than just playing smartphone. So that's why our Dhamma education have to be very proactive to get them involved. And children and youth now, they need a lot of activities. They cannot sit still to listen. So sometimes we have to even put in, just like the multiple intelligence, to develop their skill in different ways, to get their senses to be involved, so they get more interested to learn the Dhamma. So these are the ways and means that we can actually introduce to the children, and also the training of the mindfulness, because nowadays, even talking about mindfulness, children or youth, you have to introduce for them to experience that when you talk about mindfulness, what it means. I say to bring attention to the present moment. You cannot just tell them, but you have to do it with them. Let them feel it. Then from there, they will be able to understand, this is what it is to bring the mind to the present moment. Because the mind keep running. And the information that comes in keep coming in. So they cannot stop that. So we learn to teach them how to put mindfulness stop. Yeah? And so they are aware of the mind, aware of the thoughts that is running, and to bring about a stop at least for a moment. And then from there we train them more and more to be more aware of their six senses of their body. So the body and mind things involved. And then from there, then we hope that they will be able to focus that as a tool for their study, for the activities that they are doing, and to help them to bring about the awareness of what they can do in the present. So I hope, of course, there are a lot of more things. So I hope that few things that I've shared with you will also help you to have some idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable. I hope just answer your question. Yeah. Sister Barbara. Yeah. So we have been more innovative in education for our children so that they know how to overcome their addiction to a smartphone and a computer.
Yeah. Okay, Namo Buddhaya. Thank you, the Venerables, for sharing with us. I just have a quick one to add to what Venerable Sumangala has said about the addiction of smartphones. So it's not so much as addicted towards the playing of the phone, but it's more what they are trying to transmit through computer games into not only smartphones but in the computer. Because I heard a talk which very alarmed me, is the things that they are trying to teach which is against the grains of most of the religions, to do bad, not to do good. And they try to advertise the word bad in t-shirts and all that. And the more bad the people do, the greater prestige they get in the world, in the status, So people will check the status in the world to see whether I've done bad things that are even worse than others, so that I can get the name, the status and all that. I give an example. Like they even try to encourage people to kill the police. There are games to kill the police, games that knock down pedestrians. There was a hue and cry from parents to say that they have to ban this game, where they drive the car on the computer game and to see how many pedestrians you can knock down. So now it has come to how to kill the police, how to kill your parents, and how to kill your pets. So there are cases where they put their pets into the microwave oven, and how to they even cases putting the children in the washing machine. So things are getting very bad, and those people, they are very happy because the names are up there, so they don't care whether they go to prison for speaking bad about the president or prime minister. The whole world will know about it, and they are very happy. So what we need to do now is more than just talking about how to get more people into our religion and promote culture and all that. But we need to really work on how to really fight this new religion called computer gaming religion. Yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sister Barbara, for sharing. I don't know how many of you have this problem with your children at home. How many of your children at home are so addicted to the computer game that you find it a nuisance? None here. Huh? Okay, good.
Sorry, I forgot. They did a survey of how many youngsters know about this game called How to Kill the Police, and only about 80% of the youngsters know about this game. Then when they do a survey to the police and ask them, are you aware of this game? Only 20% of the police know that there's such a game. About 80% of children know about it. And in China, it's so bad, they even start a rehab center for computer games, rehab centers. So it's that worrying. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Sister Barbara. In fact, I must go back home and ask my son whether he plays such a game like how to kill police, or kill the pedestrian, or kill your parents. But I think in China, I have seen a program before on the TV that it's so bad that you have this rehabilitation center where these people are so addicted, they send over there, and they are what you call, they are refrain from playing all these games, and they even attempt to commit suicide. So bad because they have no chance to play games, computer games. They feel so helpless and so hopeless that they would rather go and commit suicide, to that extent. So I think it's a very serious problem. Well, once again, I think thank you to Venerables for giving us our insights on the perspective of the way forward for Theravada. In fact, both Venerables agree that rather than Theravada is the way forward for Buddhism. All right, we should forget about all the yanas, but instead to go back to the original teaching of the Buddha, which is based on the Four Noble Truths. In short. Anything else you want to add, Venerable? No. If not, then also thank you to all of you. Thank you all the members of Sangha, and thank you all brothers and sisters for taking the time off this evening to come and join us for this forum. I shall now pass back the mic to the MC, Brother Wong. Sadhu, 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 sadhu.